An excerpt from State Representative Daisy Elliott's remarks on the 115th day of the Michigan Constitutional Convention, April 5th, 1962. Michigan's residents have expressed a growing awareness of discrimination procedures. The question of civil rights is now an issue which is being widely discussed and much debated and has caused much concern. It is regrettable that the course of a nation or the future of the world should have to hinge on the fact that there are depressed people, and there are people still under the yoke of despotism and living in a form of slavery. You wonder why this issue should be so important. Let us examine the question in the United States. We, being the personification of freedom in the world, and the leader in the fight for a free people, with rights and privileges accorded to all men, have failed, in our own right, to recognize the minority groups in our backyard. Some of the delegates have said to me, "What does the Negro as one minority want? Why are they pushing so hard for these rights? We are going to give them to them, but it takes a little time for these things." I guess, Mr. President, you would have to be in the position of a Negro to understand what is in their hearts and souls. To ask for the rights accorded to one under our Constitution is not pushing. To want equal opportunities is not being impatient. To want to be free is not wanting to impose upon a society that has been closed to you. The Negro has just reached the point to know and recognize what he needs for a better way of life and is willing to fight and, if need be, die for it. The real problem in attacking the question of segregation and discrimination is not a question that can be resolved by legislation, nor can it be resolved by force. You cannot, overnight, stop a tradition and a way of life, although known to be wrong, is nevertheless a situation that has been conveniently overlooked. In a free America, we cannot control the thoughts of men and women, and I don't believe we would want to. We must learn to accept, in our minds and hearts, that this is wrong. This is not good for our nation or our people. When this point has been reached, then even partially, if not totally, the end of racial strife is near, if not finished. Mr. President, we should not hope to be accepted solely on the basis that we are Americans. President Nisbet. Mrs. Elliott, the chair is sorry. The time has expired. Mr. Farnsworth. Mr. President, I move that the time be extended to Mrs. Elliott to complete her statement. President Nisbet. The question is on the motion of Mr. Farnsworth that time be extended to Mrs. Elliott to complete her statement. Those in favor will say aye. Opposed, no. The motion prevails. You may continue. Mrs. Daisy Elliott. Thank you, Mr. President and fellow delegates. Further, the Negro, along with coming of age educationally, politically, and socially, must become, in part, a self-sustaining people by investing in our industry, greater participation in business, and greater overall participation in governmental community affairs. Therefore, as I stated before, we would not be accepted solely on the basis that we are Americans, but we are a part of the whole and not a segment of the least. The world that we are now living in presents the challenge to all people more vividly now than ever before in history. There is no place for any nation or any people or any group that would deny the rights of free men. Mr. President, I would like to sum up in these few words just how I think the average Negro feels. The children of Israel, in their exodus from Egypt into the Promised Land, having been lost in the wilderness for 40 years, saw in view the Promised Land. Joseph, their leader at that time, became ill and could go no farther. Dying, he delegated to the leadership a duty. He told them that when they reached the Promised Land, to return and dig up his bones, because free bones would never rest easy in a slave grave. This is generally the feeling of Negroes today. Not so much what we would accomplish for our day and time, but to delegate unto the future generation of Negroes a better way of life and a greater chance to be free, and when they have reached the promised land, come back and dig up our bones, for free bones will never rest easy in a slave grave.